A very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Well, it's a beautiful Thursday morning here in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm Kayode Okikulu.
And it's the 13th day in the month. So good morning and welcome. I'm Ayam.
Well, it's a
So
day
what's the
that,
13th day in the month?
It's
13th,
Thursday, it's not Friday.
Okay, the day that Twitter is officially, back in Nigeria, even though it never really went anywhere.
Thursday 13th, not Friday 13th. What's going on here?
Oh, I see.
For some movie buffs, they will understand, Friday the 13th. But it's Thursday, not Friday. And it's somebody's birthday that I know. So, yes, you were saying something.
Oh, I see. So, it's a lot of things happening today. Mixed feelings, definitely.
Yeah.
Especially, the elephant in the room, right? It's more like the bird in the room. It's Twitter. And mixed feelings, I must say. Even though it never quite went anywhere for a lot of people. There were other ways to go around that and still get access to that. And don't forget, there are other social media platforms.
Like who?
As it were. No, not that. I didn't. What's that? Is that another bird sound?
It's another bird sound.
Oh,
yeah.
I see. I'm not fully aware of that.
K-O-O.
I've heard of it, but not fully aware. But really, it's a lot. We're going to get into that. But, we're starting on that note this morning. But that's not the only thing that has been playing out of recent. Don't forget, we spoke about the church building collapse in Delta State yesterday. Yeah. And, the conversation centered around not waiting for these disasters to happen. When you hear, sadly, it happening, for example, in Lagos, I remember Markwe was saying she expected that other state governors would say, okay, it shouldn't happen in my state, so what do we need to do to ensure that we don't have these disasters on our hands? Essentially learn, do I say, from the mishaps or the mistakes, depending on what exactly happened of others. But still yesterday, we referenced the Ikoyi building collapsed. We're looking forward to the outcome of that committee that was raised by Lagos State, the reports, the white paper. And turns out that after the show, there was some new information about that building collapse. And it's important so that we can all learn from this. I'm talking individuals, because we have to do this together. Individuals, contractors, those in the business, governors, governments, and, at all levels. And it turns out, according to what LASPCA told a coroner inquest into that particular collapse, that the construction started just before the provisional approval was given. So there are different ways to look at this, but clearly we're beginning to understand what exactly transpired with that building collapse.
So on the one hand, the approval was not given before the work started on the site. Months, according to the council, to LASPCA. But, work was going on for months. So the question then is, what were we doing? Who was supposed to be oversighting? Who was supposed to be monitoring to ensure that even if the approval had been given prior, who was monitoring to ensure that the things that were approved are the things that have been done? Part of the issues raised, in the process, and I hope that will also come up subsequently, is that people had begun to compromise on quality of materials. Remember, the metal is supposed to be 12 inches or so.
The width or the thickness?
The thickness
right.
Has reduced by maybe 2 inches or so, and these things have a way of affecting the structure of a building and everything. So the work started on the site, and nobody was taking responsibility. That's another question that one should be asking around that kind of thing, because just as you said, Kayode, it's something for all of us to do. But then that responsibility of government, I've been trying to decrypt government in my head. Government is government is not just some utopian unseen force. Government is a pack of human beings who are supposed to be doing certain things at any given point in time. This monitoring of this building, for instance, is the job of 1 or 2 persons in a ministry, in a ministry, department, or agency of government, such as this Lagos State Building Control Agency. Who is it that didn't do what they were supposed to do? Approval was not given for months, and work was going on. Who was supposed to oversight? That question also is one of those that need to be answered. Mark?
You know, when you just talked about government being, by the way, good morning, everyone. When you talk about government being a pack of people, I usually visualize government quite differently. I see it as one, and it's been described oftentimes as that, a behemoth, you know, it's really large. So just try to imagine a robot. If you're one of those into sci-fi movies, imagine Transformers, something as huge as that. And then you now have to have individuals operating different levers to make that machine work. That's how I picture government oftentimes. That's the imagery that comes to my mind. And if you do not move those levers for good or for bad, you know, the machine is just there. It's not going to do anything by itself. It's not automated. That's not how it is. But this revelation given at the coroner's inquest, you'll be surprised, is more commonplace than, you know, than we think it is. It's not an extraordinary thing. This is something that happens a lot of times in government, because people know that if you're going to wait for approvals for anything to happen, in many cases, you will wait forever. So oftentimes, if people know that they have received something in principle, let's not forget that this building that went down in Ikoyi was one of 3. The 2 others are standing, so it is possible that those 2 already had approvals, but this 3rd one, they were waiting for approval before they went ahead. So I believe they already thought, well, we were going to get approval anyway, so they went ahead with the work. Now, the question is, what machinery, you know, does government put in place to double check when we know that this thing is more commonplace than we know it is? What other check and balance do we have to ensure that what we actually give in, what is eventually given in terms of approval, is what those people, in terms of what they asked for? For instance, if you ask to build a 5-bedroom bungalow, and this is how you picture it to be, and you've already submitted an approval, and you say, well, this is going to take a while, and let's not forget, we're in a society where inflation is not smiling, and you buy cement today is 3,000 naira, you go back tomorrow is 4,000 naira. You cannot wait for those kinds of things. So sometimes people just get started anyway and say, okay, but how do we ensure, I mean, within the ranks of government, that eventually when the approval for a 5-bedroom plan comes in, what we have approved for that person is what the person is already doing? I think that's where the gap is. So let's not forget that there were many, many more questions as to how, you know, so many floors were approved, and, you know, more than the floors approved was what they were building. There was the question of, oh, when you approve this kind of foundation for this many floors, oh, it can still carry this many more. But, you know, where was that approval given? And who was, as you rightly pointed out, Ayo, who was monitoring? These are some of the questions. But it's good to know that the inquiry is going on, as the coroner's inquest is underway, and I'm sure that there'll be many more. I'm hoping that there'll be lessons being learned, not just by the state government, which is conducting this coroner's inquest, but by other states paying attention to the details being revealed in that, so that they can begin to plug the loopholes. They can begin to close the gaps that causes this sort of unnecessary, avoidable accidents that take people's lives away. Gentlemen.
Oh, yes, indeed. I mean, there certainly will be that expectation on the part of everybody, to all those who are concerned, and many will also be looking to see, so what happens to those other 2 buildings? And then, but as you've said, we all need to look inwards and ensure that certain measures are taken to prevent these kind of things from happening again. Well, that said, let's delve right into some of the dailies and see what their headlines are about. We're going to start with The Guardian newspaper this morning, and they focus on FG lifts Twitter ban after 222 days. 546.5 billion naira economic losses. Stakeholders divided say FG should not gag platform. ECOWAS court plans to deliver judgment next week. So it's going to be late in the day. We never left Twitter. Nigerians react. So, you know, this ECOWAS court, I wonder what is going to become of that now. So,
I mean, aren't judgments given in, what is it called, retrospect now? Or what?
So what's going to be the essence of this?
Not forgetting that we still have judgments that are pending, that have been given, but I've not seen the light of day, so...
And you just wonder, how many cases are ECOWAS courts handling that they can't deliver justice so quick and fast like that? I thought...
And some have been delivered and have not been obeyed.
Obeyed in the breach, eh? So, who knows? It's about being relevant, remember, because if people's perception about the courts differ, remember what they say, something has to be seen to have been. So, all of that may just play in people's minds. Well, it's a completely different scenario at the bottom strip right there, COVID-19. Summit urges Nigeria to galvanize other nations to seek debt relief. IMF wants global collaboration to boost Africa's vaccination drive. So that's what you see there. And there's a little bit of a piece of information, story there at the bottom strip as well. Why ex-SGF Babachi Lawal was not reported to EFCC in alleged 544 million naira contract scam. So if you're interested in that, here you have it. That's The Guardian today.
Well, for the Nigerian Tribune, the focus is quite similar. After 7 months, FG lifts Twitter suspension. It's a page 28 read, and you see a breakdown of the agreement, or at least the statement the government put out on behalf of both parties, but essentially maybe telling the side of the federal government story. So perhaps Twitter might want to corroborate that or keep quiet. I don't know, but clearly it looks like there are timelines at some of these agreements. And, well, it's a page 28 read, as I said. But, you know, if you see the picture on the front page, the Nigerian Tribune actually gives some sort of insight into the last moment of former governor of Oyo State, Chief Adebayo Alawa Kala, who died yesterday. Pages 4 and 5. You see Buhari, Jonathan, Tinubu, governors of Afenifere, YC, others mourn. Makinde suspends state event, opens condolence register in governor's office. And the family says he died peacefully. That's a focus for the Nigerian Tribune this morning. And on top of the nameplate, just to mention this one, which is very important. 48 killed in Niger, Plateau. Zulum says Boko Haram controls 2 Borno local government areas. So it's really a lot. Page 23, especially in light of, you know, the recent onslaughts, not just on banditry, but, you know, terrorism. You see that Boko Haram still controls 2 local government areas in Borno State. It is sad, it is shocking, clearly something we don't want to see. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
Well, that's the lead story of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Boko Haram still in control of 2 Borno LGAs, says Zulum. Stories on page 5. Says Guzamala, Abadam LGAs remain under Boko Haram control. Once ISWAP regrouping with 300 motorbikes. That's 300. It's a lot. 18 killed in fresh Plateau village attack. Bandits abduct village head. 2 foreigners, 9 others in Zamfara. FG will never allow killings of Zamfara magnitude again, scribed to Magashi, as Matawale alleges bandits are released without charge. Will continue to deal with terrorists, Buhari says. Story is on page 5. And right above the nameplate, right under the FG lifts ban on Twitter, Nigerians tired of stories on killings. That's ascribed to the President of the Senate. The story is on page 8 of the paper.
What is he doing about it?
Well, I guess we'll have to, as you often say, the devil is in the details.
And, you know, another question to even ask is, earlier on you said that bandits released without charge. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you see them paraded, right? So what happens? They're released afterwards and, I mean, go and sin no more. Isn't there meant to be some process to that?
So what will that will galvanize them to keep going on, because if they know we're going to go and come out without charge.
And that's coming from no less a governor. Matawale alleges bandits are released without charge. Remember that conversation we had with the ex-IGP, who said that, look, where there is no consequence for crime, people are going to continue, Mr. Solomon Arase.
So which is what we're seeing.
Which is what the governor is alleging now. And a governor will be in a rightful position to know whether or not these things are happening.
So that feeds into the narrative, what we've always said here, that we all know there is a problem with our structure, but can't seem to agree on how to address it. So even governors are now saying this again. They're released without charge. How can that keep happening in a scenario like this? If this is not an opportunity to address these kind of problems, I don't know what else we're waiting for.
Sincerely. Well, that story is on page 5 if you want to get more details of that same story. And flags at half-mast for Shonekon, that's the picture story you see there. National flags flying at half-mast at the presidential villa in line with the directive that national flags be flown at half-mast following the death of former head of interim national government, Chief Ernest Shonekon, in Abuja yesterday. APC convention will be held after addressing 4 critical issues. Let's subscribe to Boni. Find that story on page 8. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. No, just before we take Mr. and Mrs. Sports on the back. Fallout of Nigeria's victory. Egypt may sack coach.
May
sack coach. Well, the picture, the Vanguard
maybe after the tournament.
The picture the newspaper used is also very instructive.
But then they lose one more match. Salah is off the next Jets to Liverpool, maybe.
And
it was just a 1-0 win. What if it was 5-0? What would have happened?
Don't you know when was the last time Nigeria defeated Egypt
in that manner?
Hey, I mean, give it
so
to
it's
our
more than a
boys.
1-0, right?
And right above that,
it's 3
still
points, eh?
basking in the joy. What Eguavon told Super Eagles that made them go crazy.
Oh, come on, guys. Let's not overdo this.
Well, the story is on.
You have another match coming through.
I know. We need to stay focused.
Put your head on the ground. Keep your head on the ground. There's another match coming.
Well, don't forget what you quoted Eguavon saying yesterday. Every match will be treated like a final.
I hope the players too are in that same mindset.
Everyone wants to take some stardom. Don't you think so? Mr. and Mrs. Mrs. is before her dressing mirror. Mr. is speaking from behind the scene. Why she left him remains a mystery. I saw one of the love poems he wrote for her. He ended it with, "My love for you is electrifying." And Mrs. says, that was his mistake. If you mention electricity in this country, what readily comes to mind is NEPA. That's the Vanguard newspaper this morning.
Ouch.
So they don't like that. Not good feedback.
Still trying to recover from that. Oh well, let's look at, I'm so sorry, let's look at Daily Trust for you. And the headlines on the front page of Daily Trust is nothing to laugh about, to be honest. And I don't think that the governor is trying to be politically correct. Look at that. Terrorists overrunning our state. Zulum Matawale cry out. 2 LGAs under ISWAP occupation. That's according to Borno governor. Military have no modern weapons from Zamfara governor. Deploy to Kano jets. 1,000 armored personnel carriers. Our troops well equipped. That's from the military. You see all of this coming from perhaps the condolence visit paid by the federal government to Zamfara State yesterday. So some of it coming from there, but perhaps others coming from elsewhere. But page 5 will give you all of the details. Terrorists overrunning our state. Zulum Matawale cry out. Yes, you also see the picture there. Sympathy visit by federal government delegation to Government House in Gusau yesterday. Talking about power, look at this. Power firms lose 1.6 trillion naira in 7 years over unutilized electricity. Did you hear that? Not that the electricity is not available, it's unutilized. In other words, people are generating, but somehow it's not getting to the homes of people who need it, or businesses of people who need it. So you might want to look at page 20 for those who are concerned about that and who have the responsibility to do something about it. Tinubu will not endorse candidates until constitution is changed. That's from Afeni Ferry. You also have this story on Twitter ban. Federal government lifts Twitter ban 7 months after, warns users. So the lifting is not coming on a platter of gold. Comes with strings attached. Page 4 will give you details. And something we'll be following for you on the front pages. Kano tricycle riders call off strike. That says on page 6 of the paper. Let's leave it there for Daily Trust.
Well, take a look at New Telegraph. APC National Convention. Our February date stands, says Akpano Duede. Insists party still consulting. Dismisses June date as fake news. That's what you see right there. And just beneath that, brings us back down to earth. 18 killed, houses burned as herders launch fresh attack on Pato. So the front page of Daily Trust, also tough reminder. Then you see this one on the front page of New Telegraph as well. So when the governor of Zamfara says terrorist overrunning, present continuous means it's still going on, and there may be more local governments that they may lose if things continue that way. So, well, then oil ownership, that's at the bottom strip. Adebanjo counters Obasanjo says oil belongs to Niger Delta region. That's New Telegraph today.
Well, next up is Nigerian News Direct. The lead story, as you would expect, is on the Twitter ban lifting. Lifting of Twitter suspension excites Nigerians. Okay, that's how the Nigerian News Direct captions that one. Accepts tax security terms of FG. Nigerians must use social media platform more responsibly. You know, that's Atcan President, page 2. Okay, you clearly get responses on Twitter on that one. There's another headline in red. We need to pay attention to that one, and it's on subsidy. NLC directs affiliates, CSOs to mobilize for protest. So we've been hearing drums of protests this time around, and you just wonder what this year holds for Nigeria regarding all of that. And just one more, yes, right next to that, you see this one, might interest you. Senate to reduce Nigeria's borrowing. That's coming from none other than the President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan.
When? 2023 budget?
I'm just waiting for how that's going to happen. Don't forget that, you know, Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning already said this budget is going to be path-financed by borrowing. So reduced borrowing could mean reduced budget spending, right? I mean, that, unless my maths is wrong.
Except we do well in our revenue generation. Or
more
do
than,
better.
We do more than 10 trillion naira this year.
You're looking at me as I'm the minister. I'm not the minister.
I'm just asking. I mean, just asking, just so to be sure that, I mean, you're right, really.
Yeah.
If we do better with
no, look there. don't look at me.
That's what they say to the appropriate people. So they'll hear you properly.
Oh, yes.
All right, very, very quickly, Daily Independent leads with this one. 2023 presidency, Southwest may ostracize Osinbajo. I have nothing against Tinubu. Osinbajo is my choice, says Akinola. And right under that picture as well, troops lack modern tools to battle Boko Haram and bandits. That's ascribed to governors. Two Borno councils under Boko Haram control, says Governor Zulum. Bandits are released without being charged, Governor Matawale. That's the Daily Independent this morning. Okay.
Let's quickly look at leadership for you. They also have that story. ISWAP attacks on the rise, Governor Zulum cries out. Says 2 local governments still under terrorist control. Gunmen kill 18 people in Plateau village. 8,372 killed, 5,018 abducted in 2021. It's according to a report. Just in case you're wondering what report it is, you might want to flip to page 4 of the paper. Bandits kidnap more traders in Kaduna. PMB reiterates commitments to end banditry. These are all the lead headlines, let me say the riders to the lead headline on the front page of leadership for you this morning. They also have that story on Twitter, Operation 7 months after federal government lifts ban on Twitter operations is also there. Let's leave it there for leadership newspapers. Take a break now, and we'll be back to sink our teeth into the main issues for the day. Please stay with us.
Lagos-based entrepreneur Gechi Egemonu was selling more than 500,000 worth of watches, shoes and handbags on Twitter per week. Now, with the site suspended by the Nigerian government, Egemonu does not know how she will cope.
I feel very, very distraught. Like, I feel really, really disorganized. I don't know how to put myself back together because I've been trying to build this. I've been trying to build this platform. I've been trying to put my best, be consistent. They said, do this, post more, talk to more people. I've done everything I needed to do, but then I was able to do that because I had the platform. But right now, I don't have that platform anymore.
Scores of small and medium-sized businesses across Africa's most populous nation and largest economy are reeling from the indefinite suspension of the social media site.
I know for sure it's been very damaging because a lot of firms run on ad campaigns. A lot of business opportunity has been created just by the whole influencer thing on Twitter. People make money, people spend money. It's kind of like a mini ecosystem on its own, and then just snatching that away from Nigerians is kind of
Nigeria announced the move on the 4th of June, 2 days after the platform removed a post from President Muhammadu Buhari threatening to punish regional separatists. Most telecommunication sites have blocked access.
We're looking at the potential loss in their revenue, looking at potential loss, and then the ripple effect would be on output growth, because if manufacturing sector is affected, if businesses are affected, if trade sector is affected, we're looking at potential, decline in economic growth and then economic development. Why? Because the standard of living will be a lot worse compared to the cost of living. If it gets to a stage whereby there is no social media, I would really pick up my CV and start looking for job opportunities and how to fix myself into the society and how to earn a livelihood, because social media is where I eat.
With 1 in 3 Nigerians unemployed, youths restless, rampant insecurity grinding economic activity to a halt, many economic watchers say this may be Africa's biggest threat.
Yes, what we are saying is that all platforms, OTT platforms, you must register in Nigeria. You must be a corporate entity before you can do business in Nigeria. Because they are doing business in Nigeria. Whether it's Netflix, whether it's Iroko, whether it is Facebook, they are doing business in Nigeria and they are making money and they are not paying taxes. That's the reason. And in addition to being able to regulate them, they are making billions of naira out of this country and we are not paying tax. That can't be allowed to go on. Yes, as to the second question, yes, it is true. They've reached, only this morning, I got communication that yes, they are now ready to hold senior level discussions with us. Just now. I can confirm. I just confirmed with my colleague now. Yes, I just got the information. Oh, why not? We will. But our conditions have already laid out to you. 1, to do business in Nigeria, they must register as Nigerian companies. 2, they must be licensed. 3, they will have to refrain from using the platform for activities that are inimical to the growth of Nigeria.
back. Well, that is part of what we're starting off with this morning. Chidi is the one that joins us. He's a human rights activist. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Are you back on Twitter already?
Actually, it took an hour longer than they actually announced. I tried at 12 midnight, and it wasn't working. It wasn't until 1 a.m. that it actually came back on service. So maybe they need to apologize to us for that.
Does that give us an idea or inkling into how you received the news that FG had lifted the ban on Twitter?
To be honest, we've all been expecting this to happen, and what exactly has this achieved? What exactly has this ban achieved? In my opinion, it achieved absolutely nothing. If it achieved anything, it's probably a bigger pocket for the national revenue from the for the money they will be collecting from Twitter. And I think actually the federal government should share some of that cake they've just collected from Twitter, because if not for the young people of this country, they probably wouldn't have realized that Twitter was a way of generating revenue for the country. So, yeah, I think they should actually go ahead and share some of that money with us, because we opened their eyes to the possibilities that could be gotten from Twitter.
That would be, well, who knows how that will play out. But have you been able to gauge the opinion of those on Twitter in terms of how did they react, or how are they reacting to this news of the lifting?
Of course, a lot of people have been making jokes about it. Some people believe it should never have happened in the first place, you know, because think about it. We all know the only reason why Twitter was suspended was because the president was pissed off that his tweets was deleted, and we all know that was the reason. And we live in a democracy. I think the federal government shouldn't feel threatened by people expressing, citizenry expressing their opinions. You don't achieve anything by stifling the opinions and the freedom of speech of your citizenry. It actually has the opposite effect, because I think because of that ban, a lot of people became even more aware of what is going on. A lot of people even joined Twitter after the ban. So I think sometimes these actions and these knee-jerk reactions from the government end up having the opposite effect.
But, you know, you talked about stifling free speech. And, you know, that's a very touchy subject. I mean, when it comes to human rights, I mean, that's fundamental human rights, the freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of movement, and the rest. But what is quite puzzling, or what is quite interesting about this is 7 months, and this was not properly challenged in court. There was nothing definitive about that. So does that mean that this action was actually right? It wasn't stifling free speech, or the judiciary, or, you know, the arm of the judiciary was not able to get a handle on this?
Oh, I'm very happy you asked that question, because I feel like that's also where the media comes in. How many people in the media, I think channels actually did a decent job, but look at the rest of the media landscape. How many people took this seriously? How many people held the government to account? Because we need to call these things out. When we see these injustices, when we see these anti-democratic behavior from the leadership, we in the media need to come out and say this is wrong. Because, I mean, think about it, 222 days, that's pretty much 2/3 of the year gone, and a major medium of communication used by so many people, for businesses, used you know, for human rights awareness campaigns and things like that. And you know, most media people were silent about it. I think that's the core of it. We in the media, the people in the media, need to stand up to these things and call out the government. And then this can translate into the rest of the citizenry. The judiciary will get involved, and we can begin to see progress in that regards.
Well, you know, someone has to institute the case in court. The media can do as much, really, and the media has been doing a lot, I must say, actually. But then taking this to court, I mean, testing you know, the laws, as it were, to see where this swings. It has to be the job of perhaps a human rights activist. We have organizations, CSOs that do such. But it didn't look like we saw a coming together as much, people heading to court, maybe a class action, as they say. So what exactly happened? What was that disconnect? Except you thought it was right, so no point going to court about it.
No, I think in this particular instance, we obviously know that people had an alternative way of getting back onto Twitter. And I will go as far as saying that the Twitter ban only happened in name only, because in practice, everyone, I was on Twitter, I'm not ashamed to say that, and most people in Nigeria were on Twitter. And I think that, in a way, kind of, allowed people, give people, that mindset that, we don't really have to worry about it, since we can get back on Twitter. But going to the point you made, you're absolutely right. There should have been more outcry. There should have been more challenges to that in court. And I think some people within the judiciary, I know Serap did raise some points about it. I know the human rights lawyer Femi Falana did raise some points about that. And unfortunately, it wasn't followed through, I think, like I said, because people had a way of getting onto Twitter. And so probably it didn't hit us as much as it should have. And maybe that was why we saw this a bit of lackadaisical attitude in that regard, yeah.
The Serap case you mentioned, in fact, I think 100,000 naira was awarded against Serap. You know, in that case, so it was as though they went and their hand got burnt. Yeah. But it looks like the ECOWAS court will make a decision on this in the coming days. And, the question we asked, and I just wanted to get your opinion, is to what effect will that be now that the government has unsuspended Twitter, even though you say Twitter never really went anywhere? So if that judgment is given, let's just imagine, are they against the government, or what? Can that be taken in retrospect? What effect will that have?
Of course, it's never too late to administer justice. It can be delayed, but it should never be denied. And definitely, the act of suspending Twitter wasn't a democratic act at all. For me, it was a dictatorial act. It's not something becoming of a democratic society. And I feel like, yes, it should have been challenged, and going forward, people should stand up to these things and make sure that they don't repeat itself again. And I think it goes back to the older people of this country. They need to stand in solidarity with the young people and call these things out when they see them. Like I said earlier, people in the media, we all need to join hands together and make sure whenever we see these injustices that they are called out.
Young people, would you regard the suspension of Twitter by the government as an affront on young people at the time it happened? Or would you say some maybe insensitivity of government to young people, or a way of calling the young people to follow the straight and narrow?
I think it's definitely a challenge, and it's definitely an affront to the young people, not just the young people, but to everybody who values and who respects democracy and who values the freedom of speech that is accorded to every democratic country. So banning Twitter, which is a major medium of communication, a platform that we have seen that have actually had a lot of positive influence on society. I remember the case of Hine Umoren, who was murdered in Akwa Ibom. It was through Twitter. People started investigating and doing all sorts of things. And through those efforts, we were able to crack the case of the murderer, of the alleged murderer of that particular individual. So, and in this time, 222 days that we haven't had Twitter, it's been who knows how many cases would have been solved if we had that.
Would you then say, just before we throw it to Abuja, would you then say it is a counter-protest of sorts when you say that people went on Twitter via other means, what in finance they will call ways and means? Would you say it's a counter-protest on the part of Nigerians?
In a way, yes. In a way, I think young people of this country have always been very inventive. We've always been very creative, and we've always found ways around measures that we don't like. And finally, I just want to say that the government of this country should stop infantilizing young people. And I remember during after the ban, the minister came and said, VPN might affect your security. And I was thinking, no, minister, I'm sure you are not trying to adult explain to the IT-savvy young people of this country about how internet security works. So things like that, or them making comments like, oh, you can go and use other other social media platforms. You can go use Facebook. You can go use Instagram. The truth is that some people build their profiles on specific platforms. There are people who have a massive following on Facebook and do their businesses there who don't have profiles on Facebook, on Twitter, and vice versa. There are those who have profiles on Twitter who don't have it on Instagram. So the government and the leaders of this country should actually respect the intellect and the adulthood of the young people of this country.
Okay, if you could make this response short, do you think this is going to address, because they want to address a number of issues on the social media at the moment.
Okay.
Do you see this addressing the quote-unquote mob action, which some people say happens on Twitter?
To be honest, I don't think this has anything to it. Some people already feel like it's not a coincidence that the election is coming up, and then this,
there you go.
And then this Twitter ban has just been lifted. So, and we know that you know, the people in power, unfortunately, aren't the most innocent when it comes to mob action and things like that. So, if their concern was mob action, I don't think they would be lifting Twitter, but I really don't think it has anything to do with that.
We'll talk a little more about that maybe a little later, but let's go to Abuja and get some more perspective. Markwe.
Thank you, Chamberlain. We have with us Mr. Wale Oluwade, who is the CEO of Growth Masters Consulting. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you, Mark.
And a Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to you. I was just about to say, it's like it's going to be a good year indeed.
Yeah, it is. It looks like that, you know, and we pray for a good year.
Indeed, we're always hopeful and optimistic, but no one saw this coming. Yes, indeed, we had been hinted, because they had been told, oh, a few more clauses just needed to be sorted out, and the ban was going to be lifted. That's what we were told sometime last year. Yeah. But I don't think we saw that the ban was going to be ultimately lifted in January this year. Did you see it coming?
No, I didn't. But, I mean, like you said, it was expected to have been lifted, you know, since way back, you know. So it's better late than never, you know. And I listened to the guest in Lagos, you know. There are, I mean, in summary, economic implications, legal implications, and the biggest one for me is reputational, you know. So if you talk about the economic implications, investments implications, tax revenues implications, freelancers, you know, you call them influencers, whose source of livelihoods depends on these micro-blogging sites, startups. The critical segments of the economic loss, you know, is SMEs, you know. Now, there are figures bandied about here and there. I saw the one on Guardian this morning, 555 billion. I think that's a bit exaggerated in my own view. 100 billion, 150 billion, that should be reasonable, you know, loss for me, economic loss. Now, coming to legal implications.
Economic loss on whose angle now?
On all these demographics that I listed.
Okay.
You know, startups, SMEs, e-commerce platforms, you know, microbloggers, freelancers or influencers, as you call them.
Even for the microblogging site itself.
Even for the, of course, definitely.
It certainly must have.
Of course, definitely.
If you were to put that in dollars, do
but
you think that perhaps
this is not a Nigerian entity, so you know that's their own loss. But we're talking about Nigerian economic ecosystem. You know, now.
No, that's why I'm trying to, you know, put the Guardian figure in context. So I don't know if it includes that. Because that would be in dollars if you were to convert it.
Exactly.
Maybe that might, you know, raise it up to that
threshold. But the computation is wrong. And like I said, it's, I mean, if this was examining the loss to Nigeria, the economy of Nigeria, it's overly exaggerated, you know, in my view. And so legal implications, the UN Universal Declaration on human rights, for Article 19, you know, expressly forbids infringement on the rights of people to freedom of expression, you know, either to seek or disseminate or receive information. African Charter on Peoples and Human Rights, you know, likewise, Article 9, subsection 2, forbids, you know, this kind of attitude. And then, of course, the Nigerian Constitution guarantees the rights of Nigerians, you know, to freedom of expression. Now, there's a line of demarcation between freedom of expression and sedition or incitement to violence or hate speech and all of that. These are crimes. And I strongly believe, of course, social media has given room to reckless individuals or groups, purveying hate speech, incitement to violence. These are crimes, and people who do that, should be, taken to face the law. They should face the law and pay for such crimes. But then, like the guest in Lagos said, there are certain practices, and that brings me to the third implication, which is reputational damage. Mankwe, in the midst of all of this, the biggest, casualty Nigeria suffered is the damage to our reputation as a so-called democratic society. There are behaviors that are totally antithetical to, what a democratic society represents. One of them is the banning or infringement or an erosion on the rights of citizens of such societies to freedom of expression. The first thing the dictatorial societies or fascist societies do is to go clamping down on the rights of their citizens to express themselves freely. And this is where, I feel so sad, for Mr. President, and Nigeria as a whole, that the advisors of this government did not think it wise to say, okay, we've done this for a week or 2 weeks. Can we pull back and keep the negotiations going with Twitter? Because, what does this do to Nigeria's image? In the midst of every other, crisis we face, and which is available to the global world. I mean, the lingo out there is that, the world is a global village. There's nothing going on here that is not known all over the world. Now, you add to that, or you top on that, the fact that a potential tourist or investor wants to come to Nigeria. And like we've said, they don't wait for Mr. President to go to all those places to say, I'm looking for investors. Nigeria is beautiful, come and invest. We have the best, tax system and all of that. No, they take their advisories from their embassies in Nigeria. And what do you think they say? So a potential investor to Nigeria calls the UK embassy or Singaporean embassy in Nigeria to say, tell me I want to come to Nigeria, and then he says, see, are you prepared to, when you come to Nigeria for a week or 2 weeks, you don't have access to your Twitter feed? So the reputational damage to Nigeria is incalculable. So even this 555 billion, for me, even though I said it's exaggerated because, that's economically speaking, but for the reputation of Nigeria, it's incalculable. And that's where the big issue for me is, like I said, it's good enough the ban has been lifted, but it was way too long. Way too long. This shouldn't have dragged on as it is. So many livelihoods, young individuals, that's another implication. We have a youth crisis of unemployment and insecurity, and these are, conjoined, because if the youths don't have something to do, we've discussed this over and over again, they're going to find something to do, so they take to crime. Now, they have a window of expressing themselves, of, a lady imports hair, foreign hair from wherever, and all she does, advertise them on a Twitter feed or Instagram, and then you go shut that down. So what are you saying? She should be carrying this hair, physically all over the streets and all of that, So it was a wrong, decision, wrong-headed on every level. But even when it was done, I thought some, calmer heads should have sat down with the authorities and said, no, gentlemen, we need to pull back on this, especially for the reputation of Nigeria in the global community. Democracies don't behave like this.
Okay, so I was just about to say that I think you missed the first two reports which we played. The first talking about the economic implications of the ban. Shortly after, I think I was done shortly after the ban on Twitter, and we spoke to a lot of small businesses which depended on these platforms for adverts, and also they talk the response of the federal government saying that they should go to other platforms. The other social, after all, it was not all the social media platforms that they banned. But there was a question, there was a huge question, because in his defense, when he was speaking to State House correspondents, Alhaji Mohammed, who is the Minister for Information and Culture, was talking about how these social media apps are making a lot of money from Nigeria, and they cannot just continue like that without paying taxes. So they were asking that they come and set up shop here in Nigeria and be able to, you know, there should be some accountability, so to speak, to government over this. And we do not know what the final terms of the agreement are and what has been done in that regard. But then there was also the question of, oh, is it only Twitter that hasn't set up shop here? Why is it the only one you have clamped down on? There were questions around that. But do you think that based on that, because as I said, we're not very certain of the final outcomes, but we do have from the press release that was given now, we do have that there were some benefits accruing. For instance, I'm seeing here Twitter has agreed to enroll Nigeria in its partner support and law enforcement portals. It gives details on what the partner support is. We're also seeing here Twitter has agreed to act with a respectful acknowledgement of Nigerian laws and the national culture and history on which such legislation has been built, and work with the FGN and the broader industry to develop a code of conduct in line with global best practices. Twitter has agreed to act with the respectful acknowledgement of Nigerian laws, etc., etc. We've also seen here, yeah, and that's why they've lifted the suspension of Twitter. There is nothing specific.
Concrete, that's the word
about
actually. Concrete.
The economy.
Exactly.
Should we be asking questions on that?
Absolutely, Malkwe, absolutely. And also, I mean, all of those you reeled out, I didn't say anything concrete, in concrete terms. Maybe they don't want to, you know, make it public, but also, like I said, this is a democratic society. It should be in the public domain, you know. The benefits accruing to Nigeria. But, I mean, meanwhile, the tax revenue implications of losses to Nigeria is because everyone who advertises, everyone who makes sales, there's a way FIRS or whatever, you know, states, whatever, they have a way of, you know, taxing those, you know, income. So does Twitter have to set up shop in Nigeria? I don't think so. I don't think so, because Facebook doesn't have any office in Nigeria, Instagram, even though they're owned by the same entity. I mean, even WhatsApp, you know. But the point is that there are ways, better ways. This whole episode, you know, should have been handled in a more mature, more diplomatic, you know, manner than
but
this.
in terms of taxes, because I know that a number of other countries are beginning to raise that, taxes on adverts. We've seen that with the European countries and Facebook giants, and also Google as well.
Absolutely.
Do you think that we should be making a demand on the social
That's
media
the point.
companies?
The social media platforms are primarily advertisement, you know, platforms. And they are more effective than the traditional method of advertisement, because they are faster, they can reach more people. You know, how many people watch TV or read newspapers if you advertise? But on social media platforms, everybody's got a handheld device, you know. So it's primarily advertisement, and that's where the revenues are. You can hardly watch a video on YouTube without, even if it's 30 seconds, without seeing adverts and all of that. Those are, you know, revenues. So government should sit down. You know, you would expect people at the FIRS, you know, to actually sit down and have a department or section there, you know, named, you know, e-commerce, whatever, or tech sector, whatever, taxing, you know, watching all of this critically and making sure Nigeria does not lose any kobo or any naira of potential tax revenues. And but like I said also, Malkwe, this whole episode, this sordid affair, should have been handled in a more matured, more civilized, more diplomatic, you know, manner, because the huge reputational loss to Nigeria, like I said, is incalculable. You know, it's incalculable, and I mean, for tourists, what tourists want to come to? Because if you mention nations, a picture immediately comes. It's branding, actually. You know, you mentioned the UK, okay, you mentioned America, you mentioned Dubai, you mentioned Singapore. A picture immediately comes to your mind. So if you mention Nigeria, and the picture that comes to mind, oh, where they banned, where I won't have access to my Twitter or my Instagram, or anything can happen. You know, so that's what we missed it. We missed the ball there.
Okay. Let's leave this to Lagos now. I'm sure that our guest there will have some responses to you.
Yeah, and so thank you, Mark. Well, winding down this one, two things. First, how do you see this playing out moving forward? Because there's a school of thought that says, look, well, yeah, you suspended it, what's in the name, suspension ban, they use it interchangeably.
Yeah.
So, but some did without it for a while, quote unquote, assuming that were the case. Yeah. And now it's back. They put in some regulation, so they expect the regulatory bodies to do or comply with what they've agreed with. But then, how is this going to impact on the users themselves? Do you think they will feel threatened and say, well, there are rules now, comply with the rules, or you're off?
Well, I think talking about rules, they should start by implementing basic traffic rules. If they are able to do
Rules on Twitter.
on the road, so they should start from that. We all know that you know, the people, sadly, that are in charge of decision making in this country sometimes aren't the most meticulous with rule implementation and rule enforcement. So I don't think I'll be holding my breath on them even attempting to implement any of these alleged rules that we haven't even heard about. We haven't heard the details of.
It will be on Twitter to ensure that they stick to that.
Well, to be honest, I think the big takeaway from this is, you know, please don't try to stifle free speech. Don't try to, you know, dismiss the opinions of people. Actually, listen to your citizenry, listen to what they have to say. Convince, not by the power of your status or your influence, but the power of your arguments and ideas. And I think that's the big point that the government is missing in all of this, you know. We live in a democratic society. The Twitter ban was definitely unconstitutional. You can't just wake up one day and with the wave of a hand, you know, ban a popular, you know, platform where people do businesses. I mean, think about it. I know in some parts of Europe, there were times when, you know, there were agitations and people and some of the governments weren't happy with, say, the functioning of businesses like Uber. I remember in the UK at the time, they weren't so happy about it. But what did they just ban Uber? No, they went to court. That's what you do in a democratic society. When you're unhappy about something, you go to court and argue it out.
All right, Chidi Zwane, human rights activist, thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, back in a moment. Stay with us.
Well, Mr. Wale Oluwade is still with us, and we're discussing the Twitter ban. But now we're going to relate it to the Economic Sustainability Plan, which has just been revealed by the federal government. We understand that about 2 million jobs were retained or saved over the last year. Don't forget that there was some monies released to help with the Economic Sustainability Plan, and different plans and projects were going on simultaneously. I don't know whether this has any relationship with it, because some people will say that, well, while we were saving jobs in one area, we were losing some or threatening some in some other areas. Because some people might say that, yes, there was no Twitter, but there were other platforms that people could have migrated to. But I do not know what you make of the success of the Economic Sustainability Plan so far and the projections for 2022.
Thank you, Mark. I mean, when you say success, I don't know. Can you be more specific? In what areas exactly?
In terms of how we were able to implement it, because we understand that about 2 million jobs were retained and saved in the process of implementing the Economic Sustainability Plan. Do you think that that was a measure of success coming from the year of COVID, where lots of people lost their jobs or their jobs were threatened as a result of what had happened with COVID?
Okay, yeah, I saw the report, I mean, a summary of it, and I saw different statistics on, you know, number of jobs created from different MDAs or sectors of the economy, and total was 2.1 million either created or saved. But my worry with that, I mean, even they mentioned some of these programs, Survivor Fund. I know people who got survivor funds, and that was real. I know a few people who got, but how many jobs were created from the survivor fund? How many of them are paying taxes? How many people are employed as a result of the survivor funds? I also saw something about the NSIA, Nigerian Sovereign Investment Wealth Fund.
Creating solar?
Yeah, 10 billion naira with the Rural Electrification Agency for solar whatever in the rural areas. So the question also is, I'm not sure, is that an intention of government or has it been done? If it's been done, so who are the people who got the monies? How many people are they employing? These jobs that are being created, are they pensionable jobs or just casual or temporary jobs? Now, these are information that are not there. And I mean, we could go on. So, but
We also know about the 774,000 jobs, which was supposed to be...
No, that got into a huge controversy.
Yes, it was controversial.
I think it was abandoned or stopped.
No, it actually went
but
on.
Then it was engulfed in a huge controversy.
Maybe the controversy didn't let us see.
I didn't even see anything about that.
But we do know that it was implemented at the end of the day, and I think they said they're done and dusted.
But I didn't even see anything about that in this report. Then the other one that caught my attention was 250,000 new business registrations at the Corporate Affairs Commission. And my quick response to that is, I have maybe 12 or 15 business names personally registered, different companies. And I'm not sure maybe more than three of them are actually engaged in any form of business. So that you registered 250,000 names at the CAC does not mean they are doing business. Otherwise, you should show us, their bank details, their TIN, that's tax identification numbers, their BVNs, and then how many people are they employing? So those are gaps. But in summary, my overall take is this government, 2019 June, at new, what was it called? It used to be May 29th, Democracy Day. So it was June 1st. The president had said, made a promise. Yeah, June 12th, but it's June 1st, actually. Okay, no, June 12th.
Yeah, June 12th.
Yeah, June 12th. So the president had said that they were going to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years, meaning you were going to create 10 million jobs per annum. So, Malpa, if we're now saying, let's even say it's correct. The 2.1 million, I question it big time, but let's even say it's correct. That's 2.1 million in 2 years, 2019 and 2020, 2021. So you've done 2.1. So you're already in a deficit because in 2.5 years, you ought to have done 25 million jobs. So, and you've only done 2.1. So you are short, by about 22.5 million jobs. So you can see how far we've I don't say failed, but what the huge deficit is, so...
What the huge task ahead is.
Exactly, so when you ask me, do I think is a success?
Yeah, but if you look at the areas where the monies were channeled, when you look at where government was thinking of intervening, do you think that those were critical areas that could have generated the sort of traction we're looking to see, especially with unemployment and creating more jobs? I know that there was also a huge thing about trying to save jobs, but coming from where we were, from the lockdowns, etc., do you think that where we spent money was where we ought to have spent it? Yeah,
my response to that, Marco, is that there's a textbook method or strategy to dealing with SMEs if you want to create jobs. Because the MSMEs, are the engine of economic growth in any society, in every developed economy. So the textbook practice is to put these MSMEs in a cluster or a tech hub, or some, like India, they call it special economic zones. That way, you create access to critical infrastructure, roads and maybe power, for instance, and then even access to finance. That way, whatever they do there is measurable easily. Now, if you have MSMEs there's also, I saw a rapid response register or something like that at the, disaster management, whatever ministry. So if you have these MSMEs, scattered everywhere, most likely 70 or 80% of them, no fixed address. The addresses you have, if you go there, you can't even find them. You don't do MSMEs like that. So the plan, the conceptualization of the plan is faulty ab initio. That's what we need to go. So, and we've said this over and over again. The thinking that you could do MSMEs in this haphazard, manner is not going to work. You have to put them in clusters, in hubs, in special economic zones.
How feasible is that? When you think of the fact that we're trying to encourage people to be able to do business from homes, we're telling people that it doesn't have to be so technical for you to start a business. And people have been able to show this potential by what they even do, what they advertise on social media. For instance, and when you think of access, where people need access to these businesses, to say that you have to be in some special hub, does it really bring them home to the people who really need their services?
Don't get me wrong, Malpe. There are services you don't have to go, get the service physically, But let's say a smartphone, your device has an issue. You've got to go to Computer Village. Nobody's going to fix your I'm not going to come to your house, for you to fix my smartphone. I would go to computer village, either Lagos, Abuja, or wherever they are in all the states. You know, so, and do you know how much revenue is generated at the computer village? Do you know how much revenue is generated at a place like UTC in Abuja?
So there are some businesses that are suited to hubs, but not all businesses
most SME businesses are suited to hubs. Most SMEs, because the service sector of any economy is the engine of growth and all of that. And they are most suited to hubs. Even tech hubs, you know, they have tech hubs. Silicon Valley, even in Lagos, when Zuckerberg and Dorsey came to Nigeria, they didn't visit people in their homes. They went to the tech village in Lagos. You know, so this idea that people can stay in their homes and then you can measure what they are doing. So I can be in my home and tell you I employ 5 people. How do you know that? So the people who track the figures would have to visit every homes. No, Mark, well, let's be reasonable. Let's be smart. The way we run this country, you know, we've not run this country, you know, like smart people, unfortunately. And I think going forward, that's one of the things we need to be looking for. You know, people who can run this country, you know, smartly.
Well, we have to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Mr. Wale Oluwade is the CEO of Growth Masters Consulting and is speaking to us here in our Abuja studios. Thank you once again. And a Happy New Year.
Same to you. Happy New Year.
We'll take a break at this point and we're back to take a further look at the Economic Sustainability Plan. Please stay with us. Well, the Minister of State for Budget and National Planning is in our Abuja studios. Mr. Clem Agba, you're welcome to Sunrise Elite this morning.
Thank you for having me.
The Economic and Sustainability Plan, I do not know if a lot of the benefits that have accrued as a result of this scheme, people understand that this is what the scheme is about. Can you just shed a little more light on, you know, how we come about this name sometimes and what is expected under them?
Okay, thank you very much. You recall that the 2020 budget was passed and signed into law by Mr. President December 17th, 2019. And sometime in February or March, COVID came upon us. This wasn't something that was expected, and it was something too that was not very well understood. And what we were told from Bill Gates and others was that Africans were going to be dying on the streets. And so Mr. President set up the Economic Sustainability Committee, headed by His Excellency, the Vice President. And what were the things that we were supposed to do? One, ensure that lives were not lost. You know, we had to come up with policies and programs that was to save lives. Two, we know that since we didn't understand the nature of the disease and the economies were going to be shut down, not just here in Nigeria, but everywhere in the world, it meant that economic activities were going to go down. And so we were going to go into either a recession or a depression. And so the whole aim was come up with policies to ensure that even if we went into a recession, it's not deep, that there will be a quick recovery. The other is people are going to be staying at home. How do we ensure that we retain jobs? You know, how do we ensure that we even create more jobs? But more importantly, to try and save job losses. How do we protect the vulnerable ones in the society? And it was also an opportunity to take a review of our health infrastructure and to say what state are they, what is it that can be done to ensure that they are brought into world-class standard. And then the aviation industry, for instance, the hospitality, everything was going to be shut down. How do we ensure that we provide some level of succor? So those were the terms of reference for us. And I want to say that given the results that we have seen, it was a success because it was just a transit plan, you know, a 12-month plan. It wasn't a plan that was supposed to continue to run. Like, you know, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan was a plan that we had, which was going to end. And we were also developing a new National Development Plan 2021 to 2025. So we had to come up with the sustainability plan just to ensure that we bounce back quickly.
So the economic sustainability plan, as we know it, is ended?
It's ended technically in terms, when you look at it from a 12-month perspective in terms of funding. However, some of the programs are still running. You understand? The funds are still available to the agencies that haven't gotten completion. And those are the ones that where you are getting the funds from the budget. Because with the 2.3 trillion, it's only 500 billion that was taken from special accounts that is in the budget. So the other ones that are interventions from financial institutions based on negotiated rates and conditions is still running, because it's not affected by the budget.
So, but for those which will keep going on, for instance, the monies that was supposed to be released by the NSIA, I think about 10 billion naira for solar projects, and to get us coupling the solar equipment up and going. I want to imagine that they are run like businesses. Under what covering will those ones, under what liner will those ones now come, since the economic sustainability plan is technically over?
Okay, a plan, the economic sustainability plan is now being succeeded by the National Development Plan. So it's not as if there's a truncation, you know. Certain things are still running in the plan. But I think that the whole idea of me coming here is to let Nigerians know what we did, you know, and the rate of success. You know, why I say that, there were a couple of programs. First, on the health sector, there were programs around food security. Remember, at that period, people really couldn't move. Even farm products could not move. Mr. President had to approve a release of 70,000 tons of food from the strategic food reserves. And then the study also showed that we were losing about 60% of whatever is produced in the country. So it was also an opportunity to try to provide access to the market for farmers. And you know that majority of our farmers live in the rural areas, okay? And 60% of these people live in the rural areas. 80% of what we consume come from these rural areas, which is why the economic sustainability plan, this aspect of it, also dovetailed into the new national development plan, where rural development has now been separated from agriculture. You know, we are now seeing it as integrated rural development, because for sustainability purposes, you don't just go and put a road in the rural areas around the agro corridors and think that something has been done. Other levels or other forms of infrastructure also needs to go to those areas, taking broadband technology to those areas. So the issue of off-grid power. And that is why you see that all of these are in the plan, because it's when you bring this infrastructure to these rural areas, food that is being produced cannot move. It will attract investors to those areas. Maybe some might just go there to aggregate from the farmers what has been produced. Others may decide to set up processing plants, because now they have power, and they also have the power to communicate to the rest of the world, and are also able to easily move these products. So if you look at it from that perspective, about 495 kilometers of roads, rural roads around agro corridors, which cuts across 366 communities, you know, were constructed.
Okay, so let me reel some of the figures which you gave in your presentation about the success of the work, of the plan so far. Yeah. You talked about 1.3 million jobs being retained through the MSME and payroll support, 774,000 jobs. I imagine that was the one that's supposed to be created under the Ministry of Labor and Employment, which became somewhat controversial, but it went ahead. And then there's a 26,000 and 21 jobs. So you also talked about 1.1 million Nigerians benefiting from the different schemes. I want to ask if this 1.1 million Nigerians, which you talk about benefiting under the ESP MSME Survival Fund, are they the same people? Are they included in the same 1.3 million jobs which you speak about?
The total jobs created within the period of the economic sustainability and through the programs, it's about 2.1 million jobs.
Okay.
But through MSMEs, through the 774,000 jobs, and through the rural roads and the road rehabilitation that took place during the period.
But can we really count the 774,000 jobs as real jobs, knowing that they were just one-offs? And that was that. We're going to be paid once, and that was that.
Remember the situation. Nobody knew what was going to happen. People needed to eat, they needed to survive.
It is true, but I'm saying if you pay one person a one-off, if you pay the person for 1 month, the person doesn't have that same job again for the rest of the year, does that really count as a job?
They were paid for 3 months, and that's why there's another program, which is the National Poverty Reduction with Growth Strategy, where some of these other programs are going to be revisited with a view to seeing how they can be sustained. Recall that with the COVID-19, we lost about 57% of revenues. I remember you were at Transcorp when the World Bank made the presentation around our revenue situation, where we currently are third from the bottom in terms of revenue to GDP. Resources are scarce. You understand? We have to do what we have to do within the limit of the resources
That's
that we have.
understandable. I'm just trying to be sure that we're painting the right picture.
Yeah, we are painting the right picture. The program said we are doing this for 3 months. You understand? And we did it for 3 months. You know, we kept people alive for 3 months. But the program goes beyond that. Work is still ongoing in other areas because you are just taking only the 774,000 jobs. In the health sector, for instance, where this country had only about, I would say, 3.5 molecular labs. We built new molecular labs, about 52.
Honorable Minister, I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts. We will come back and speak a lot more to the health sector, which is highly critical when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Mr. Clem Agba, Minister of State for Budget and National Planning, is still here with us in our budget studios. And I was just saying that you should hold your thoughts, and we'll talk a little more about health. And health is particularly important because let's not forget that even though the, trying to remember the name of the committee now, which was briefing Presidential Task Force, which was briefing Nigerians at that point, you know, telling us what was happening with regards to COVID, you know, did a yeoman's job in terms of, you know, keeping Nigerians updated. At some point, they decided to take a tour of facilities around the country, health facilities around the country. And we heard the secretary to the government of the Federation, I'm sure you heard him as well, saying that he didn't know that our health facilities were in such bad situations. They knew they were bad, but not this bad. So when you talk about interventions in health, where would you say that the economic sustainability plan was most concerned, but where would you say the impact of their intervention can be most felt?
Okay, it's true that the PTF went around the country to look at tertiary, that's the federal tertiary institutions. And what they saw was really, really bad. And because of that, considering the illness at hand then, there were 4 critical areas for us to intervene. One was the provision of the personal protective equipment for the frontline workers. 2 was the need to build isolation centers. You could see what was going on in Europe where they couldn't find enough space. But just like I said, nobody planned for this. 3, there was the need to have intensive care units. So that was another area of intervention for us. And then the last but not the least is setting up of molecular labs, because you have to do the diagnostic to know exactly what is wrong. Before the ESP, if you were living in Sokoto or Port Harcourt or Lagos, and there is a suspicion of Lassa fever, they have to take the samples to Irua Specialist Hospital in Edo. And God forbid, before they come back, the person is gone. So that was how bad the situation was. But today, with the intervention of the ESP, you don't need to leave your state. All 36 states are now covered with molecular labs. In fact, the 52 federal tertiary institutions now have molecular labs, so they can do all forms of diagnosis. You don't need to take any sample outside the country or from one end of the country to the other. Two, for each of these hospitals, we put in money to build 10-bedded intensive care units.
Well, sorry, Honorable Minister, to interrupt you. I still know that, samples are still being taken outside of this country as a result of sequencing. I think that this was also something that was revealed by eminent virologists in that regard. Now, I do not know whether it is that we're not capable or we do not have the human capital, because it's one thing to build the facilities, it's another thing to have people who can actually do this work. But, just to make that point, because that was something that came to the fore.
When did this come to the fore?
This year. That came to the fore this year. I don't know whether...
It's January 2022?
I do not know if you missed it in the news. Did you see it in the news at all?
Yeah, I didn't.
Especially when Omicron came to the fore. There was revelations about Omicron and the sequencing, because it was discovered in South Africa, as to whether or not, Nigeria was able to, discover variants of this particular COVID. There were deficiencies in that regard. I don't know if you heard.
Nigeria is able to do those sequencing, and we've got state-of-the-art equipment, and we have the capability, we have the people to do that which is required. The only issue is that there are some of the centers that still need to be certified by NCDC before they can be put to use.
So while we wait for that to happen, and I'm sure that, that if there's any area where it can be felt, in terms of the interventions of the ESP, it certainly will be in the area of building molecular labs. But aside that, yes, we saw the tents that were put up, the temporary measures put up for isolation. How have we
went beyond those temporary ones. It was within the first couple of months that you had those tents, okay? But molecular labs have been built, isolation centers have been built, and I've been going around the country to see for myself what has been done. We've also gotten third-party monitors because I can't cover everywhere. I'm sure you saw the situation in Port Harcourt when I went to the University of Port Harcourt Teaching Hospital, and for the first time I complained about what I saw there because it was totally different from what I have seen from other 10 different centers across the country. So a lot of progress has been made. It's just that things seem to be normal now. Remember, just take your mind back to the early months of COVID, the fear, that gripped people, how worried people are. Even those who used to come to take your sample, you'd see how they would dress up. But do they do that anymore? No. You understand? So that is to tell you how far we did well with the sustainability plan. And in all of these institutions, they have enough personal protective equipment for 2 years. We also had to go over and beyond to get some hazard allowance for frontline workers, although that became a labor issue later. It was not at the instance of the medical personnel. It was at the instance of government to say the frontline workers, should be given some form of motivation. And once that was done, every medical personnel felt that it was something that they should get. It was part of the sustainability plan.
Okay, let's go to Lagos now. I understand my colleagues have questions for you. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mokwe. Let me, Mr. Agba, let me take you back to the a bit about agriculture that you started with earlier. And one of the the major objective of the agriculture part, the agriculture and food security part, was to create 5 million jobs in the agricultural sector while boosting agricultural production and guaranteeing food security. And part of the project elements include identifying 20,000 to 100,000 hectares of land per state for agricultural use. The first question that I want to ask about that is, How much did the states partner with the federal government on this? What was the cooperation, what was the level of cooperation to be able to achieve some of these things?
Okay, thank you very much for that. With the economic sustainability plan, we had a lot of work with the states. They were pre-informed of what the plans were, and we also got their buy-in. And in the agriculture sector, what was more important was the post-harvest losses. Because when you're looking at increasing of acreages, 20,000 to 100,000 hectares, it was more for the future. So what was done in those areas where states had provided land was land clearing in preparation for the future. But the issue then was what we were currently producing. For every 10,000 tons, we were losing 6,000. And so that was a low-hanging fruit to be dealt with. And that's why the issue of those rural routes was very, very important. And I recall that when I went to Imo State to monitor some of what was going on, I was even surprised that in some areas where I came from, they were already waiting for inauguration of those roads. That's how fast it was, and the community people were really very happy to say that in the past we would have lost all of these products that we have, but now it's easy on us to move these products to the market. In fact, we no longer even go to the market. The market comes to us to buy this product. So for the 20,000 to 100,000 cultivation, it's more of a futuristic plan, which is also still in the National Development Plan. And that is why those 5 million that we planned for is not mentioned in the number of jobs that were created.
What what raised that question with me, Mr. Agba, is that the timeline in the plan says 12 months. So I'm wondering if it was futuristic, that wasn't included in the plan. So I'm just wondering how that is. So what's the 12-month timeline? While the objective is 5 million jobs, and then there was supposed to be a partnership with the states within those 12 months.
Like I said, you know how land issues go. The plan is not just on its own. Like I've said, the economic sustainability plan was a plan midwifing both the ERGP and the new National Development Plan. So you don't say because you had a plan and that plan period has expired, you abandon all of what you have done. It's like a man and a woman agreeing to get married and saying we're going to have four children. You are not going to have all of those children in the same year. You are also not going to have, even if the woman gets pregnant, there is a period that naturally you will need to go through. The issue is there cooperation with the states? Yes. Are the states providing land? Yes. Is land clearing going on? Yes. That is a process. It doesn't mean that right from day one, once you start it, you have everything planted. A lot of land clearing was done in the southern part of the country.
Okay, well, you told my colleague earlier that technically the ESP has stopped because it's supposed to be a 12-month plan. So I'm suspecting then there would be some kind of succession plan to this economic sustainability problem, and economic sustainability plan, and I'm not talking about the National Development Plan. In order to ensure that the success is recorded, especially with this agricultural section of the plan that you talked about, is sustained, what's the sustainability plan for this plan?
The National Development Plan 2021 to 2025 is the sustainability plan for the ESP. And that's why, because we knew the National Development Plan was going to come. And that's why we said a 12-month period for that plan. And what you refer to, this other aspect, was not supposed to come from the 500 billion. Like I did mention, the 500 billion was the one that actually, in real terms, has a 12-month span because it's based on the budget. and the budget has a lifespan of 1 year. But the other programs in the plan, which are facilities from the financial institutions, continues to run. And so that does not end because they are not limited by the law or by the budget. What we did was work with the Central Bank of Nigeria, negotiated rates, and ensured that the interest rates were single digit. And the moratoriums were also given. And then we also said the crop areas that has to be covered. So it's something that is still running. And that's the bigger part of the sustainability plan because the total stimulus package is 2.3 trillion. But government was only providing 500 billion from the limited resources that we had. And those 500 billion were gotten from special accounts.
Okay, so let's talk about the jobs part because it's a big deal. We're dealing with unemployment, 33%. And I mean, in that plan, you said that part of the successes was saving and creating 2 million jobs. But in that same year, I'm talking last year now, the report by the UNDP and the National Bureau of Statistics showed that 20% of full-time workforce actually lost their jobs during the COVID-19 pandemic. Incidentally, at the time when the ESP was meant to be, operating. So you say 2 million jobs were saved and created. Well, there's still that 774,000 part, which some people will say, well, was for 3 months. So they might want to subtract it for that. But really, what is the plan to fully recover those jobs? Because as I speak with you, there are a lot of Nigerians listening now that are a part of that 1 out of 5 that lost their jobs.
First and foremost, when we say government, government is not just the federal government of Nigeria. And what I have reported is the contribution of the federal government of Nigeria to either saving jobs or creating jobs. What we also reported are the numbers from the programs that are based on the economic sustainability plan for the 1 year. We did not cover other programs outside of the economic sustainability plan. I mean, the numbers of jobs that are created. We did not add up the numbers of the jobs that were either saved by the states or created by the states, if any was done. So you have the federal government, you have the state government, and you have the local government. And it's all of this that makes up government. There are several good things that happened with the economic sustainability plan. As I went around the country for town hall meetings, I think it was both in Kano and in Lagos, where a group of those who were trained in the ICT and also VSAT installation told me that they have set up a group, a WhatsApp group where they communicate with one another. They are beginning to employ people. We don't have those numbers, and those numbers have not been added to what I have reported. They even told me there were about 2 ladies who mentioned that they went through the VSAT training, but during the course of installation, there are heights that they have to climb. And because they are ladies, they are unable to do that. So what they do with their WhatsApp group is reach out to their male folks to say, come help us do it. They are beginning to pass on jobs from one person to the other. Where some are having so much to do, they are passing on these jobs to their other colleagues. I found that this was also happening in Port Harcourt. But these numbers have not been captured. So there's a whole lot of good that has come out of the economic sustainability plan. Remember that at the beginning we were expecting that people should just be dying on the streets. That didn't happen. And it didn't happen not because we folded our arms. It didn't happen because something was done. And I think that we need to recognize that fact, that government did something. The economy itself, one of the objectives was for it not to go into a deep recession. Some countries are still battling recession, some of the so-called advanced countries. But we only had a recession for 2 months, and we came out of it. That is something that is good. Even inflation, just a few months before the restriction, inflation has started trending up, both headline, core, and food inflation. And it went on and on for almost 18 months till April 2021. But since then, we are seeing inflation trending down. Yes, it's still high, you understand, but it's now on a positive trajectory, trending down both headline inflation, core inflation, and food inflation. That is something
Honorable
that is positive.
Minister,
It's not just happening on its own.
because of our
it's
time,
happening because there were some forms of
I have to jump in now,
intervention.
pardon me. And I mean, it would be good to have a figure, really. And I mean, it talks to the handshake with state, so Nigerians can know just how many jobs were created, because we know how many jobs were lost. 20%, 1 out of every 5 full-time employee actually lost their jobs, according to that report. But quickly, I'd like you to talk about the challenges in a minute or two, because you have spoken about the challenges of the ERGP, why it didn't quite meet the targets that were set. But for the ESP, you said it was you wanted to save lives, ensure that economic activities continued, create jobs, save jobs, and the rest. And then we had, you know, that Twitter ban. So it took a lot of jobs. Was that a challenge for you in trying to create jobs? You realized that with a policy of the government trying to create jobs also led to job losses. Was that a challenge for you?
It wasn't a challenge for me, and I think that the Twitter issue has been settled. I think that is something that is good. Negotiations have been held, agreements have been made, and we are back on stream. I think that that's what is important. But was it because of Twitter that we were losing jobs? Nigerians were still having other forms or ways of communicating. But really, this is not the reason why I'm here today. I'd like to concentrate more on the economic sustainability plan and its implementation.
All right, let me pick on one of those other items, which appears to be top on some of the list in that document that you put out. And that has to do with the NSIA funding Solar Power Nigeria with 10 billion naira as part of 5 million household connection target. Could you talk a little more about this? I mean, yes, we see that NSIA has agreed for that, but have funds been released, and to who?
Again, this is an area I don't have so much of the details, because I can speak more on the 500 billion because we control the release of those funds, so I can say specifically to whom funds have been released, for what they have been used. But for other forms of interventions that are outside of my brief, I do not have those details.
Okay, is it possible you tell us or know about what was the criteria for selecting this 5 million households, and how are they going to be situated?
Now you are going deeper into more technical things, and that's why the various MDAs have various technical capabilities, and they determine what they do. Mine is just to do the fund release, monitoring, and evaluation.
Okay, so since the National Development Plan is supposed to feed in and continue from the ESP, what do people expect if they benefited from the ESP? Do they expect that the NDP will automatically reach out to them and continue those projects where they are needed?
With the NDP, if you look at it critically, the NDP is supposed to be driven by the organized private sector. We expect that about 350 trillion will be required to do this. And of this, almost 300 trillion is coming from the organized private sector, whereas the government is just supposed to contribute about 50 trillion, where the federal government brings in about 30 and the states 20. In the conceptualization of the NDP, we had to ensure that the development of it was more from the driven by the private sector, because this is supposed to be a private sector driven plan. What we have done as government is to facilitate the plan. What we have done, liaising with the organized private sector, have said, based on previous plans and ERGP, what are the things that are militating against the private sector from not only running but flying? And that's why, for the first time, we developed a volume 3 of the plan. In the past, there was only one volume, which is just the plan. This time we have 3 volumes. Volume 1, the plan. Volume 2 are the prioritized projects that have been costed. And then the volume 3 is the legislative imperative, where we look at the various laws that we have that are working against the ease of doing business and therefore militating against the private sector from doing well. We also looked at the various policies that we have that are also working against the private sector from driving the economy. So the economic sustainability plan itself was more from government intervention, whereas the national development plan goes much, much beyond the government, but also the organized private sector and then the subnational government.
You know, I must say quickly, before I take this back to Mark, that NDP is very ambitious. I mean, looking at the size of it alone, you see it's almost 20 times 2022 budget. And the private sector, as you said, is meant to drive that particular one, giving over 80% in terms of funding. Can the private sector really bring that much to the table?
Right now, when you look at the Nigerian GDP, 90% of it is private sector. So they're already doing that. So what we are trying to do is to make it much, much easier. When you refer to the budget that we have is not a national budget. The numbers you look at is the federal government budget of Nigeria. The national budget will be the budget of the federal government, the budget of the 36 states plus FCT, and then the budget of the 774 local governments. That's when it is national. You have to add those numbers. But even when you put all of those numbers together, it's still only about 8 or 9% of the GDP. So I don't think that it is too ambitious. And we had captains of industry in the development of the plan. Tedo Peter's side was the co-chair of the National Steering Committee. We had the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, we had SMIDIN, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, the Nigerian Economic Society. You know, we brought in all the players who should know what the issues are in the private sector, who should know what the challenges are and how they can be removed. We were quite open with this. You know, we didn't come to dictate, to say that this is what must be done. And for the first time, we are developing a plan that is bottom-up, truly developed by Nigerians, not using consultants. In the past, consultants sit down, they write the plan, and then it's sent to both the states and the federal government to say, yeah, this is what we will do. But this time around, it was totally different.
But some people will argue, I mean, the consultants aren't the Nigerians as well.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we don't know whether we've been using foreign consultants or we've been using Nigerian consultants. Have we been using Nigerian consultants?
I think it's been a combination of both. But the difference this time is that Nigerians, you know, there were 26 technical working groups where we had over 1,600 Nigerians working. You know, youths, women, people with some challenges. They were all involved in the conceptualization of the plan.
For you, what would you say the biggest lesson we learned from the implementation of the economic sustainability plan was?
For me, the challenge, first, a lesson which was positive, is that with the plan, there was strong monitoring. You know, like we'll say, if you expect something, you have to inspect it. Because what is not, you are going to lose what is not inspected. And that's where my Port Harcourt visit again comes to fore. I was disappointed with what I saw in the isolation center. It was totally different.
Well, they claimed that you were in a hurry and that they were still doing something or something to that. I don't know if you saw the post-briefing after you left.
That I was in a hurry to do what?
I don't know if you saw. Did you see the post-briefing?
I saw the post-briefing where they did say that there was a communication gap. That's one. And that the equipment were removed from the isolation center because of Omicron, and they wanted to fumigate the place. You understand? They didn't tell me that while I was there. You know, if I was in a hurry, why did I insist on going into the building? They showed me the building, and I said, let's go in. They told me it was a red zone. that I couldn't. And I said, but I've visited other hospitals, and I used the PPEs, and I went in. If the doctors and nurses can go in with their PPEs and are safe, I should be able to do same. And then they told me that, okay, they couldn't find the keys. I said, okay, let's go to the molecular lab while you are looking for the keys. I'll come back. And it was that drama that really got me very suspicious. And then when I went in, the place was empty. Old beds, not a single equipment.
So you intend to keep up the inspections as we move on into 2022?
In fact, later today, I'm visiting NIPRI in Abuja here for inspection. And like I said, I can't go around all the projects. You understand? So what I've been doing is randomly picking and choosing where I go. I just give like a day's notice that I am coming. But we have gotten independent, that's third-party independent monitors to go around the various projects.
On that note, we have to say thank you so much for coming on Sunrise today. We believe that as you go around these facilities, you will take the press along with you, and we'll also be in on whatever it is that you are able to bring out, especially as in your quest to remain accountable to Nigerians.
Can I say something, Maupe? You say, as I go around, you expect I take the press. I have been going around with the press.
No, I'm just...
But no, what I'm trying to say, but what gets reported is the negative.
Okay.
You understand? And I think that there is an issue with that. I had visited about 10 hospitals across the country, and it was world-class standard, yes, the facilities that were put in place. They were not reported. But just the only one I complained, and just one aspect, the isolation center, the news is everywhere. So we should project the good things that we are doing.
Well, we know here, we certainly will do that. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Today this morning. Mr. Claire Magba is the Minister of State for Budget and National Planning. We can see some of your mails coming in thick and fast, as Chamberlain will say. Twitter is back. That's how Festus Akimboyewa captures this one. He says, Twitter ban by federal government was harsh. The ban was like killing a fly with a sledgehammer. But it doesn't mean that Twitter is infallible and cannot be sanctioned. India almost banned Twitter and has to quickly put its house in order.
Okay, well, take a look at Dari Ajibike's tweet. Says, I wasn't surprised by the lifting of Twitter ban because this is the campaign year. Expect many things to happen this year to appease the electorate for vote.
Well, Ken Garem is in that WhatsApp group as well. But I say that Twitter group, saying, why wouldn't the FG lift the ban on Twitter, seeing that 2023 election campaign would soon kick off?
Well, Collins is interested in something completely different, the economic sustainability plan. It's impressive to have such an intelligent minister like the Minister of State for Budget and National Planning. If such intelligent people are employed for the rest of the ministries, especially in the finance ministry, Nigeria will be better for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, many are saying they're not able to tweet as of yet. Perhaps their ISPs have not done the needful. You know, when politicians say, do the needful. Well, maybe we should use that at the same time. So, who knows? Hopefully, as the day goes on, you just may be able. But that is the show today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain also.
I'm Kayode Okikelu.
I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.
And I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.